Hello, my name is Anthony Wall. I am not a journalist. The reason we have a licensed journalists is so we could have vetting of what people say, the integrity of it. See, but instead they exploited a truth that they used for lies. Originally still where and how that we share hundreds of nations with on-off campus relationships that are manifest, where and how identities of countries, of nations individually grouped in together, are bound, tactical ulterior from that identity of value progression that causes evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere, or it forces that from here in demonstration of it. Lead of IDs, force-based nature transfer, per science. Excuse me. But this is a citizen's arrest. Because since before the World Trade Center attack, I've been asking to report people who recorded, confessed, and demonstrated how the identity of the ground locations were involved with judges and prosecutors and police forms that were all involved with other countries and federal criminals and their family members before they got caught. And since with the same relative identity of the ground locations and campuses. So they've been putting people on fake campuses, fake tied to other people, and they have the campuses 24/7 recording. So they just use that. In other words, we have the people that are vetting things and using premises, using other people's names criminally, and they know this themselves because of how many from Wethersfield, Interbranch, Intercities. These are West Hartford locations, New Britain locations, Rocky Hill locations, Wethersfield locations, all connected with timed illusion stacking in databases and on-off campuses with people that through time were pretending to know me just so they could film me next to someone, pretend that I was in other contexts with them that obviously could never have been filmed. Or in other words, that because we have investigators, and identities of the law with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and military, foreign and domestic, and interreligious locations, and inter-private simultaneously, where they are kept needing to hide the same sequence of finite, active, progressive lies. Roles with the vertical and horizontal database. This is worse than extortion of me and other people. So you have to pick something and fight because of the way they have everyone nature. And because they want and need the breaching method, and everyone else has style that need people to use words such values like fight or argument, like in other words, rather than revelations. There are revelations just because of how, in relationship to just because of how we had denied. How the zoning laws that were/are designed to defend everyone, how they were/are employed by a breaching method that also employed color with the language of the law, as the color of the law, in collusion against the nature of the law, where and how each identity of ground locations, areas, and states, since before when they were colonies, and the identities of the countries, nations, individually grouped together that were the complete possession of the sophistication here. It was keeping everyone to retreat. It was engineering everyone invested, self-defended, self-valuing. Abridged sciences, abridged from semi-ancient times, knowing that victims that self-value reactions as self-valued abridged sciences roles with self-value simultaneously. The real causes of negative value nature progressions, action natures, and demonstration of it blamed on other things other than themselves, and not by accident conveniently, increasingly, with the means to get away with doing that, with the styles of that being and having been perfected. So this is also hyper-journalism, because mandated law was prevented outside of courts, because of how we have the courts and the prosecutors and the state's attorneys and the judges, retired and standing, involved with locations crimes, as victims of this method that is a child abuse method, that is simultaneously sickly a child abuse method, to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned, and the means to discern it having to come through everyone already as a whole bunch of motivations, natures of interests, ulterior from it, but needing to blame other things other than themselves for all that was really caused, and is really caused by that. For example, needing to blame racism for that which left all locations tactically a landscape theater, tactically denatured, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And where they knew that they were building everyone to roles, where exceptions and exception nature itself was everyone employed to and as identities of titles, names, identity ground locations, representatives, where the ground distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously shares a semi-nature relationship to the same thing our nature shares a semi-nature relationship, to that which is simultaneously greater than infinity, while it is simultaneously more finite than three identities of zero. And so the abridged sciences in English, if someone says, well, what's the difference? Well, how come the predicate act is named the predicate in English, and the predicate act is the predicate act in the law? This comes to the identity of relativity, where and how there is one identity of value/value progression, that inventions work or not in relationship to it, and they are further positive or not in relationship to it. And the study of this reveals natures of positive that are criminal insidious natures of positive. And as, for example, truths used to lie. And for example, as breaching screens, tools, weapons, worse, through motivations other. This is a method that keeps people needing and wanting to be called out for racism or whatever, even, because they want and need counters. There's an array of real but mixed by that breaching method. For example, inseparable. It is simultaneous relationship. When people bring up such things and they leave out that simultaneous breaching method that American history was about, where and how that breaching method was so entrenched that no one had free speech, and it wasn't against England, but in the way to force everyone to roll with us as a new country. And England was already extorted themselves. Look at the size of the British Empire. But it's little England. They keep all locations, areas, and states with and as what is fluent through them, self-valued, never having fathomed, because of how it is sickly, distinctly a child abuse method. So what Connecticut's interbranch, private, overt criminal enterprises, intermilitary, foreign, and domestic, they are not just recorded, but completely recorded on off campuses with vertical and horizontal. database method that makes positive and negative treatments. Treatments of people's names, responses to questions, asking, titling experts on the predicate act will lie to you in your face. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not, the bar itself was recorded evidence how they were used by that breaching method. That if anyone would be able to start making protraction of that protractions of that identity of truth /S, that is still its identity as exceptions at the same time. That is an identity of truth, it's positive. That is not criminal insidiousness nature. It is an identity of relationship to the identity of value / value progression that no one invented. It just is an increasing identity of volume, where it is equal to value as nature / nature as value, as volume. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And it is required to speak it that way, the same way computers have to work that way. Each physical identity of location, each physical identity of the elements of the hardware. You see the box. Inside there are a whole bunch of microchips, a whole bunch of CPU locations, a whole bunch of locations. Memory is being used to think also, being used to sort, being used for logic, but as this abridged. See, the Constitution was not supposed to be valued abridged. This breaching method knew. This was sophistication here before anyone was. And it knew it could exploit any leader of any modern nation. Because it has fluent through all locations, areas, and states of every modern nation. Syntax and counter to it. A syntax relationship to Washington, D.C. and the World Trade Center that is manifest the same way it is in other countries. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and all exceptions are in demonstration of the same thing. The branches of government, the executive branch, the political branch, and the judicial branch /S. They are manifest the way they are because of how nature works. Same reason that cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall are manifest the way they are. A semi-nature relationship to the complete identity. And the body of, as the value of the body of value. Coming through those three, where the solid walls connect. Plant life, animal life, the elements of ground, the elements of space, water, air. What cannot be temporary nature and make more of its nature, because it has to be make a nature that's equivalent to its nature. It keeps what is simultaneous value. Only what is simultaneous and concentrated value of Earth can do that. We could be other systems, but they will continue to cause. And in this trap, everyone to self-value. Lethal IDs, our nature, our identity's value. Where and how we are individual, grouped, species, identity of volume, invisible but still discernible trinity, is an only increasing identity of volume as its own system of what is positive or negative to itself. So we have this we have systems tactile area from that designed to stay conduit. As a human fact, human nature styles, they can't defend themselves and afford defenses of anyone else who wants to use short words proper, who wants to use integrity proper, who wants to use ethics proper. And that knew that the branches of government here in hundreds of nations at once, and then they'd be shared, forcing each other to be a theater positive, pretending impressions of being an adult, impressions of integrity, rather than being about Marbury versus Madison honestly and with integrity. They were all removed from that, from being capable of that, everyone, by a method that is intercampuses and is intra-campuses, every single one of them. All database relationships private, and it's overt criminal enterprise at the same time. And the interbranch kept needing to hide lie progressions, right to every position of this identity of value/value progression we are. Where and how this is positive's course. I'll drop the floors, boxings. So, positive and negative. These are three bound identities of positive. That is invisible but still discernible. One coming through what is negative. One as making where more positive, temporary positive is being made as temporary / lasting positive, rather than everything's automatically temporary positive. Where and how this one identity of volume will only stay positive unto itself. All exceptions in exception nature are a demonstration of this. Length of high D's is exception, and is exception nature, and demonstrate force, space, nature transfer. Nature is identity's identity of relationship to its value progression, positive or negative to itself. Where and how, even though those three are bound and they will never separate, individual, grouped, and species. Though there are three increasing identities of volume. That is further positive or negative. So, but in relationship to two other distinctly bound, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously bound by that one identity that is simultaneous. Identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. These five sequence true before the order of the finite. 1. The order of the finite. 2. The order of what is active. 3. The value of this. 2. What is progressive, not per some gimmick. When you see modern nations, not just America, we have to talk to ourselves as ourselves. We have to put ourselves first, like the locations of computers. They have to mimic what is simultaneous. See, but there are through narratives of jobs and things like that, positive and negative treatments, that left out too much because the method knew they would. Only capable of it. They already entertained treatments of our founding parents, treatments of American history summaries that are overtly / insidiously, tactically, criminally foreign influenced. And that's self-value. Every single science it has this. Like English. Someone asked that question. Well, you have to ask someone who knows about predicate acts. In relationship, in other words, associated with criminal enterprises, associated with other countries, armies, and military, and maritime, all that. All that is the complete possession of an archetypal criminal enterprise, which is also relevant. So they have theory, music theory, theory of relativity. But they have the identity of relativity. Simultaneously, prevented freedom, in other words, measured. Anyone's entertaining the theory of relativity without pointing out and understanding and being led by the identity of relativity, that which is the engineering of why we are this way. These three distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous identities of temporary positive. again with the value of sequence true, and another identity of sequence nature beyond that. Where and how we are, that semi-nature that is also an increasing identity of volume only. Its one identity of volume only becomes more of itself. Only the extent of it is debatable, and those who debate it are also evidence. We have to have what is simultaneous be allowed to be truth. Allowed to be spoken. So Connecticut interbranched since the World Trade Center, and over the past 4 months, Weathersfield police have been switching names and increasing the amount of names of their officers that are also involved with proven federal criminals since before they got caught. And with my town's police chief, and with the Dillon family, other retired and standing police chief years ago. It's all involved with the same house. Forced, trick, hurt, persuaded by them to roles with them, forging, switching names. Also with former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities. Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence of Corrupt Organization Act. Someone who was dealing with predicate acts. Someone who was dealing with the identity of the ground locations. That is one of the people involved with ongoing and increasingly overt / insidiously connected remote uses of the campuses and of every identity on them. And they're making the opinions dishonest because how everyone speaking through others is involved with this method /S. That is also having been kept from off those locations. And it is how it is simultaneously. There is a mimic of what is integrity and what is the actually the capability of the time treatments of the people that then everyone has to go home. The computer gets shut down. No longer all the millions of locations and of potential when the computer's on can be used. But life keeps going. Life's value / value progression, which is an identity of the ground conjunction. Again, where it is self-generating too. Again, where it is inseparable from what is any identity of positive. And it can only be criminal and seditious nature of positive as negative, or positive that is temporary / lasting positive. But the science of that is the science that makes sure that something's going to be is true. To those 5 identities of sequence nature. So the people stacking, the design of infrastructure and the means to it, and the standards of what things could afford, and how much who could get such, how could afford, all this stuff is in a semi-ancient trap since a breaching method employed since before our founding parents were born, since before the founders of the other modern nations that were involved with perfection of this. Over here, since before our founding parents were born, they already perfected it on Native Americans. Demonstrably, most probably, and demonstrably separated from memory of what they had done damage control to the desecration of, but they had no means to preserve. What they had no means to preserve, that was that which had been revealed by ancients and ancient times before humanity became criminally foreign influenced. They were still going by the identity of value / value progression that they know would cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, evolution's fruits and gifts. English was revealed to teach evolution science. So before these officers, including a female, with the male officers using the name Sullivan. Then they have one officer named Sullivan. There were two other times. There were a number of other times that the police were involved criminally with the courts too, personally criminally, with locations. And it's all right, in other words, they want to pretend other, but they've been forging names, switching names because they can't pretend other. They brought in a whole bunch of different police forms. The same people enter cities still further involved with the principal child offenders campus that had more then and now. They have people tied to the other principals of the schools, of that school, and their other family members. They have the sense and sensibilities of jobs, of people, this is tied to hundreds of nations here and there. So the WFSB, for example, they attach me and my family to fake words, fake locations, fake sequence natures, fake ties to people, fake ties, natures of ties to people. Like fake ties to this Joshua Julian, involved with the Facebook page of the campuses, with more people on the child offender registry, as one of the people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved, also with two Mendez police, and with the Yagman family involved with predicate acts with two Mendez police involved with predicate acts on and off campuses and the houses with locations next to campuses, involved with identity thefts and fraud, sequence shifts with them, falsified police reports. The same people are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated also with the DeMoro family and a Kerr family on and off Rocky Hill locations, on and off Elm Street, on and off all along Route 3 that goes by the state judicial branch offices. They forge names and switch names. They have crime methods, the judicial branch, that are distinct from, but also not distinct from, the executive branch. Their motivations are too. And it goes back to this child abuse method that they self-value roles with everyone, speaking through everyone too. No. So this is an identity ground. All identity ground locations are and have been used criminally. And see, nature is going to demonstrate negative value nature progressions acts increasingly in demonstration of that. Nature, not the environment, the nature. We're in a syntax trap. We're in a trap where people are pretending passions and emotions, intersciences, and then they share style where they pretend that's one thing. Or they pretend it's in relationship to one identity of sequence / simultaneous nature, but not the way it is in relationship to one. Because the only way that is discernible is by figuring out what's positive as the value of sequence true, which is only increasing that which came before the order of the finite. While it is the value distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously as the order of the finite, as the value of the smallest thing, boxing, as the value of what is active, as the value of what is progressive, and where and how it is further identities complete, where it is, there's another semi-nature of identities complete, 1/3/5 parts. Control your hearts. The only exception is how there is 1/3/7, 5/7. We'll examine this on paper. The only exception to that is 1/3/5/7/10. And this is where and how the sciences, the English is revealed manifest. A through Z, and 1 through infinity, that's sequence nature. Anything that is discernible is in the ancients revealed, which is discernible. That there are distinct identities of invisible but still discernible. Identities of one identity of volume they share distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Where and how the one identity of value / value progression is an only increasing identity of volume. So per science, individually, grouped and together, we need to agree about a scientific value for this. And the ancients had to. And English was revealed to teach this. The Trinity was revealed to teach this. Allah's name was revealed to teach this, as it is spelled in English, and as it is, just as it is in distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously, as it is spelled in Arabic. Note, read right to left, and English is read left to right. And yin-yang is inseparable from this. Yin-yang and alpha and omega. Yin-yang can never be parted. Their identity of volume / S only increases. But alpha and omega, they have a differential. In other words, these are automatically temporary positive. That will only stay positive too. It will only stay positive, temporary / lasting positive, unto itself. All parts of itself. Increasing. Alpha and omega. So like the physical male and female. This is exceptions. These are exceptions. This is exception nature. And demonstration of the same thing though. Because the same identity of volume, even differences share. When they are positive unto themselves, they're also positive unto it. Its identity of volume unobstructed. So, before the World Trade Center attack, there were judges and courts recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and I found out later confirmed that this is recorded. There might be, they're pretending others simultaneously, no. They had to do this with a whole bunch of other countries, no. It's not them alone. But these are the people involved every day as victims that went to play integrity where they never had a means to. And they had to do anything, so they had to have life progressions increasingly. That's, in other words, what built New York City with a big people stacking? And then and simultaneously thought that would be progressive value, that would be positive. These were victim reactions and roles. With what? Since before cars set up the suburbs to be a theater only capable of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. So needing to as victims to use the means provided as exceptions and as exception nature to pretend and to be other. In other words, but only as criminal and ceaseless natures of positive treatment. Only as the furtherance of criminal and ceaseless natures like of wrongdoers, wrongdoing, of predicate acts, such illusions, sequence shifts, identity thefts, and frauds roles on a mass scale. Doesn't matter if someone's black or white. If you're leaving out that simultaneous breaching method that forced black and white to be sickly, distinctly victims here and there and everywhere, you're in collusion exactly where they wanted, needs increasingly. It is not hard to overcome why and how people don't agree, and or how, where and how they agree. It's all the same thing. Its logic is it all comes out needing to value. Well, they have to say, oh, well, the perfect world's not, forget the perfect world. This solution, this is the standard. Our founders left us to demonstrate that breaching method. So there is an officer. There are two officers that they have. Weathersfield Police also, so they only have only one officer named McGee. But there are two different times. One time in the 3 months after my father's death, they had an officer McGee involved also with military families. That's a different Officer McGee than the one that I say is the Officer McGee they have now. And that one is also involved with kids with Weathersfield Parks, and with Rocky Hill schools, and Weathersfield schools. And these are people that have their females in their families that work with kids. And these are people with badges. And these are people that work with medicines and drugs that are hiding life aggressions. And they have roles with the Method/S that has remote uses of judges and prosecutors of various natures of courts leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since. Roles with these predicate acts methods with the executive branch forging and switching names. These are Weathersfield Police also with federal criminals that are co-defendants in a 2006 case of former director of the FBI Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization Act, associated with counters to criminal enterprises, but they were recorded also in furtherance of them. They have the Witness Protection Program and people on and off the state of Connecticut Judicial Branch offices involved with a Faenza family /S, and with Oliveri family, and with the Joshua Stryker, and people on and off Trinity College that are involved with judges and prosecutors and police forms, and with foreign families, with predicate acts on and off Trinity College, on and off CCSU, on and off my street here where I am now, where I was born, and on and off 4 different locations I lived at, with the same people tied to the same house that they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, are involved with the new officers, with more people named Sullivan now involved with them still. They separate subjects too. They separate subjects as a crime method. When they know, for example, too, first we have to take care of the other Officer McGee's that attached me to fake conversations also with this Leahy guy and with people with the Dillon family involved with drugs, crimes, and medicine crimes and remote uses of kids, the sense and sensibilities of kids, and their uses of parks and in a field across the street from my house for identity thefts and frauds that are also their roles with falsified police reports and with covering up live aggressions tied to that and with wire crimes. These are Weathersfield police with the Weathersfield town offices. Also through administrations, remote uses of administrations forced to self-value locations, areas, and states overtly / insidiously criminally forward influenced. So we're going to watch the map that's associated all the ways from people from Weathersfield associated with the locations around where the Harriet Beecher Stowe Mark Twain house is. On and off the state of Connecticut, on and off the state capitol building, which is right near downtown Hartford. Now these are people that enter cities, pretend illusions, because of the Method/S, where the remotely used branches and foreign at the same time, and private at the same time, and overt criminal enterprises at the same time, and the Witness Protection Program. This is also verified on Facebook. They're denying what people say. They're using words like said in communications criminally, per their roles with sequence shifts, with this Faenza family also, with the people on and off the state judicial branch offices that are also involved with a whole bunch of people on and off 2 Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane and the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. They're also involved with 3 identity ground locations at the end of the Berlin Turnpike with the judges and prosecutors and military and foreign involved, for example. Also with the predicate acts on and off the campuses connected, identity thefts and frauds. They film things so they can pretend. They don't have the right not to allow to be told on the interbranch courts that forge and switch names also. And these are courts and police forms that were using locations criminally, like places in New Britain. They use the intercities, the people that run the apartments. See, bad things happen, this happen, they have to stay close to things. But then they already have those identities of law, the defense of themselves. They're sick. How could they pretend to be about science and then not have what is simultaneously use that breaching method left out, only allowing people to speak for other? So they have to pretend to be against things that they are furthering, which is exploitation of people forsaken for prevented science, while offensively upon them, they have their branches of government, other countries, private overt criminal enterprises, in collusion, preventing science, pretending to be about it anyway. All sick, child abused people. That's what spoke for the progressive value of suburbs, of Wethersfield, Connecticut, where George Washington had to come to meet with the French general before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. If that is not understood, and how and why he had to leave slavery left entrenched in Wethersfield, between New York and Boston, the slavery in the north sickly distinctly from in the south. That's because a breaching method has complete possession of the human fact-sheet nature. Each of the sciences individually grouped in together. So they rely on the other types of sciences. Increasingly, they value the other sciences abridged victims as well. Manifest individually grouped in together. Criminal and citizen's natures of positive treatments, of negative treatments, and of identity treatments, and of names treatments. And so they have uses of the reaction of the standing volume, the way it is, that a criminal citizen's nature. So there are many men and women from Central Connecticut State University that will demonstrate, recorded, confessed, and demonstrate, confirmed, how our courts, judges, and prosecutors are criminally involved with our former director of the FBI and his defended capacities leading up to that and since, and in other cases, and with his co-defendants and their family members also involved with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain through time, on and off Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut through time. Now this is not the college, the college's identity. These are the people forging and switching names, that because of how identity of the ground locations are used, because of how sense and sensibilities are used, because of how employments, there were a whole bunch of ways people on my street got tied to predicate acts on off Trinity College, on off CCSU, and with military. Now these are also people with all these countries that were involved with the World Trade Center attack and investigators of it. These are also people involved with fabricating audio and video, fake conversations with me about my father's cases, legal cases, where he was a plaintiff against the former director of the FBI, who was the defendant in a case /S that was ongoing at the time of my father's death, which is in Hartford Hospital, which is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated intercities police, involved further with predicate acts, and with foreign and domestic, medical, military, and all private with the interbranch, and judges and prosecutors, criminally involved, with locations in on and off, even the medical locations, and involved with the wire crimes, with these officers forging names, switching names, fake conversations with me. These are also doctors personally criminally involved with the prosecutors and judges and federal criminals since before they got caught, and tied to the federal criminals that were co-defendants of Robert Luskin, the former standing chairperson, the former director of the FBI. These are also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated roles with remote uses of job sites that are simultaneously tied with remote uses of the databases of child campuses. That is also involved with Mendez Police, on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, the Morrow families, Occur families, Chris Walters, that are all on and off Fox Connecticut News, on and off WFSB in Rocky Hill, roles with other people, and with themselves, with prosecutors and judges, with their family members, all along that route from where George Washington had to meet with the French general on Main Street in Old Wethersfield. On Church Street, there are houses on Church Street recorded, confessed, and demonstrated people tied to them, involved with predicate acts, also with the house in the corner of it, and with the Hanson house. Other houses on the street recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with predicate acts around my street here through time. Sequence shifts. As people that had that roles with that, with the ones with the predicate acts roles on and off Trinity College and on off CCSU. Now this is extortion too, with the forging names, switching names, while they're stacking fabricated audio and video into campuses, into private databases, and into branch locations, while they are criminally preventing writing and having prevented it through administrations. These are judges and prosecutors and people all associated with them, involved with Connecticut boxing gyms, that they also were planting people to roles with identity thefts and frauds with them, sequence shifts. Because the investigators, and identities of the law are the subject, how they were used remotely. So this is a citizen's arrest. I tell it best. Respond for them picking one name in sequence. And stop making theories and things like that. They have people making theories about people. Making lies, fake conversations with them. And they're stacking a whole bunch of more things that people need to bring up. Because the branches of government, again, too, they separate, so I don't know about that. Focus on this subject here. And they do it dishonestly. Forging, switching names, stacking names. So CNN and Fox News, I'll sign for you guys. I'll give you guys the story. I'll sign that. I won't sue you guys. If you follow mandated law for Fox Connecticut News, and for WFSB, and for WTNH, and for the New Haven FBI, and for the FBI and CIA families involved also with this. Everyone speaking through others know. And I didn't start this. They're also sequence shifting regarding where violent behavior becomes manifest. Where they started it. Now, so we need to get these are also female judges that invested themselves roles with locations used sickly. I'll show you why and how. Everything stays the way it was. Stupid, fake, pretending other. How it was motivated. How it gets away with that. So overtly, / insidiously. I'll show you how they will not let that breaching method be the subject. They blame the other things, others themselves. That which forsakes and exploits those tactically most forsaken. And it hurts more and more anyone who tries to speak about any location forsaken. Well, don't worry, Get lost. Get down. Or gather around. So, respond. That's the value of this. They have algorithms and things like that. They're pretending things are measurable because they have remote uses of investigators embedding identities criminally foreign influenced and not having been self-valued. So we're going to examine how the people pretending to be mandated law, they can't handle the mandated law properly. because it will show how they were already sick in all kinds of cases, fabricating audio and video with what was really causing negative value nature progressions acts in natures and having been exploiting them. We have remote uses of identity ground locations like parks, on, off, the locations on, off the campuses, because they have a syntax. Fact, achievement nature, lie progressions tied to how what is manifest. With all these private agreements, they had no right to agree. When other things are standing, or, let them be sued then. So, in other words, we have to have people. The news is stealing people to fake words and sequences. At the same time, the interbranch is forging and switching names and fabricating police reports, fabricating audio and video into their databases, attaching us to fake words there too. So we have to get them onto writing now. And they're incapable of defending their positions with the elections and with the elections locations. It's also how they have their religious locations involved. Different religions. Has nothing to have no integrity, where it has how it counts. And their uses of Facebook for the behavior crimes, where you'll see the courts and police forms, various natures of courts too. They've been lying about the behavior of others and of their treatment, their values, their treatments of behavior to themselves and others. They are sick, everyone, from this method. You'll examine with the locations next to the schools of each age and nature connected, how they are used. You're all abused. So respond, and I'll show you how to admonish who hurts you. And I'll show you how to admonish who pretends that they don't see how everyone's hurt. Who pretends they don't see how fake science is in the way of science.